I have for a while been trying to articulate an experience I get. Got the sword again. Hold on, actually, I can get stupider. All right. Now I have the Guinness World Record for stupidest mic clip-on thing. I'm not actually doing this. Thinking about how to even begin talking about this feels impossible, but here's my attempt. The philosopher Wittgenstein in his Tractatus said, and I'm paraphrasing here, "Whereof you can't speak, you must be silent." Something like that. I don't know the exact line. What he's saying is that some things are just ineffable. They exist beyond our ability to describe them in language. Metaphysics, the ethereal, all the nebulous stuff. If it falls outside the bounds of logical or empirical explanation, we shouldn't try to put it into words, because we can't really. He doesn't think so anyway. He thought trying to put all that stuff into language was an exercise in futility. Now, don't think for a second that I've read the Tractatus. I haven't. I'm just aware of Wittgenstein's general philosophy. I'll get around to it eventually, though. Seems kind of complicated and scary. But I've been thinking a lot about that line while trying to describe this thing, this experience. A little while back, I went to a used bookstore and got this copy of Nicomachean Ethics, or Nicomachean Ethics. I already had a copy, but the reason I got this one, another one, is because this one is filled with notes from some previous owner. And for some reason, I love these notes. Why? I don't know. I also have this copy of Generations. Big fan of this note. I would imagine that a lot of other people might also like finding little notes like this in books from previous readers. And if you were to ask them why they liked it, I also imagine they would say something like, because it's a little special, unique accent to the book, or something like that. So when I say that seeing these notes evokes in me some awareness of ultimate reality, that's a big jump, but it does. It gives me some sort of, I don't want to sound pretentious and say profound. I don't know if that does sound pretentious. Something like that. I don't know nothing about that. I hit some sort of experience like that. Synonyms for profound: heartfelt, intense, keen, great, very great. Does that count? That's 2 words. This was written by a person. I'm a person who exists or existed with an entire conscious experience that I will never understand or know, to who all kinds of stupid little things mattered to them just as much as all my stupid little things mattered to me. And they possibly lived in a different time, sort of different world. This book's not that old. This book is from like the 90s, so they're probably still out there somewhere. They wrote this down, and however many years later, I'm here reading it. We're weirdly brushing up against each other in time for a second. Ultimately, I think it just comes down to a curiosity about time and history, sort of. For the sake of not referring to this thing as this thing I'm thinking of, I'm going to call this experience Temporal Awareness. Let's talk about time and other stuff. I really wanted to ground this in something more tangible, some like a pre-existing philosophy. From everything that I'm aware of, there are a few things that come to mind when I think of this temporal awareness idea, and they come from Heidegger and Kant. Heidegger is probably most famous for his idea of Dasein, a term that in the classic German tradition is a word made to describe something that doesn't really translate to English, at least not very well. He uses it to describe the type of being that humans are, the ones who can question and relate to being itself. The English translation you usually hear is being there. Dasein, as I understand it, it's being as a part of time. He describes it as not us over here and time over here and we're kind of pushed together, but being is fundamentally tied to time. We're not really separate from time, even though we kind of view it that way. But I bring up Dasein to reference another one of Heidegger's ideas, which is ekstase, or temporal ekstase. I think I pronounced that right. This is Heidegger's term for the structure of human existence as a threefold unity of time, past, present, and future, where we always stand outside of ourselves, projecting into the future, carrying the past, and engaging with the world. We're not passively existing in time, but actively, being fundamentally constituted and stretched out throughout time. Another one of Heidegger's concepts that could be relevant here is Stimmung. This translates to something like mood. In modern philosophy, philosophers often get divvied up into two broad traditions: analytic and continental. Analytic's focused on the rigid logic, clarity, language. Continental is focused less on the precise stuff, more on lived experience, culture, aesthetics. For a long time in Western philosophy, especially among the analytics, philosophers tried to break things down through reason and rigid logic. You've probably heard René Descartes' famous line, "I think, therefore I am," in an attempt to strip away everything he could that could possibly be doubted, which it turns out is most things. He came to the conclusion that if absolutely nothing else, he could at least be sure he was thinking, and so existed. So he decided that was his first building block. Once he knew that, he could work outwards. Heidegger would disagree. He would say that being, and this idea of Stimmung, are precognitive. It comes before thought. You're always already tuned into being in one way or another. Before you can even think the thought, you're immersed in some kind of attunement. You're already immersed in being. This shapes how the world presents itself to you. Not necessarily an inner emotional mood, even though that's the translation, but how the world reveals itself to you. I think this ties into my temporal awareness thing. Before I can even form a thought about what I'm looking at in these books, I'm already immersed in some sort of being that reveals this experience. And as far as like actual moods go, I guess it would be akin to awe and wonder. You already know your boy's prone to awe and wonder. So I think all that's relevant here. I think it fits. It can sort of account for what's happening. It's at least something that I can look at and be like, yes, this is kind of the thing that I'm talking about. Pulling this sort of metaphysical experience forward. The last idea I think is relevant is Immanuel Kant's idea of the sublime. This one actually might be the closest thing to my temporal awareness. Kant's sublime is a profound experience that we feel when we're confronted with something vast or powerful, something that overwhelms us, but ultimately reveals our capacity to sort of transcend that fear or limitation through reason. He distinguishes between two types of the sublime: mathematical sublime and dynamic sublime. The mathematical is when we confront sheer vastness, like the number of stars in the sky, the age of the universe, a massive mountain range. Our senses fail under the scale, but we can use concepts to grasp what we can't directly perceive. It's our reason overcoming our sensory limits. The dynamic sublime is when we're physically threatened by something powerful, a thunderstorm, the ocean, a flood, earthquakes, and we recognize how fragile we are compared to them. I definitely think the mathematical sublime applies here while looking at these notes and considering time, considering the vastness of time, our place in it, the amount of time behind us that we know of, and however much longer exists ahead. The dynamic sublime, a little less so, but I still think it fits. The dynamic being the one where you feel threatened because, and I don't know if you know this, guys, but time actually kills you. Okay, now that I've tricked you into thinking I'm smart, let's talk about Assassin's Creed. If you're unfamiliar, Assassin's Creed is a game where you play as a modern-day person who is reliving memories of one of their ancestors using this machine. I haven't played these games in years. I don't really know what they're up to these days. I've heard there's some questionable activities afoot, but I don't really care. I'm not really talking about the game here, but an idea from the game. I've always been pretty curious about history, and I am not kidding when I say that Assassin's Creed, at least partially, instilled in me a curiosity and a love for history. And maybe my curiosity about time and other metaphysical stuff. But definitely, I think it inspired this thing, this temporal awareness that I'm talking about. Like I said, I haven't played the games in years, and I think these days they lean a little less historically accurate. But back in the day, they were decently accurate. Each game is basically a period piece. Way back in the day, I played Assassin's Creed 2, which is set in Renaissance Italy. I would literally just walk around these recreations of Florence and Venice, looking at stuff, watch people doing chores, look at what everyone was wearing, how all the buildings and the streets were laid out. Now, obviously, these cities aren't a one-to-one recreation. Some things have definitely been tailored to fit the gameplay. It is a game. But a lot of the street layouts match real historical maps from the time, and even line up with the modern-day cities in some cases. And I'm not 100% on this, but I'm pretty sure I remember, at least in the older games, the devs would talk about how they had historians come in to make sure things were historically accurate. Over the years, eventually, the devs really leaned into that historical accuracy, at least for a while. Again, I don't know what they're doing now. They're doing magic and hocus pocus now. But when they really leaned into the history aspect of it, they added the Discovery Tour mode. This is a separate mode that takes out a lot of the gameplay and just lets you walk around these recreated cities like it's a museum. It's literally just a virtual interactive museum. You can just walk around and it'll tell you about stuff that you're looking at or pass by.
Temple of Athena Nike was built on the remains of old fortifications from the Mycenaean era.
I think I remember in the one in Egypt, I walked past a guy who was like threshing wheat or something, and then you can just walk up to him and it'll be like, in ancient Egypt, they would thresh wheat like this, and then you can just watch the guy, he's there doing it. Thresh the wheat and carry it over to a little basket or something. You can do that, just walk around, watch people doing chores, watch a blacksmith, watch a farmer, walk into temples and learn about the rituals, all kinds of stuff like that. Guys, this is what I live for. This type of thing, I love. I get that might sound very boring to a lot of people, but this is exactly the kind of thing that taps into that feeling for me, that temporal awareness. Like I said, in the game's lore, you're technically playing as a modern day person, reliving the memories from the person who lived in this historical time period. I think that framing made me reflect on time differently and how we're connected across it. And by the way, I think learning about history in general can give you this feeling too. There's a big emphasis on memory. Memory fades into time too. It's like exactly the Tears in the Rain scene from Blade Runner, where Roy Batty talks about, spoilers by the way, where Roy Batty talks about when he dies, all the experiences that he's lived will disappear into time.
All those moments will be lost in time, like tears in rain.
Memory definitely ties into temporal awareness. It almost seems like this temporal awareness and memory are connected through layered time. I don't know, man. What the hell am I even talking about? I think Socrates said that once. So anyways, guys, does any of that make sense, or am I stupid? Let me know.